are with us each and every day. That there are no coincidences in life. You do perform what we consider miracles. For you, it's just part of being God. That's what you do, is you love and care for people. Help us to think of you more often, to see you more often when you're at work, to realize that it is you that we are seeing. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Okay, quick review of our series so far. Does God really say that? So yes or no? Does God say cleanliness is next to godliness?
No.
No, okay. Does God say that God helps those who help themselves? Yes or no?
No.
I know you can talk. I saw you do it before church, so let it rip. Does God say that charity begins at home?
No.
No. Are you sensing a theme here as part of this series? That should give you a clue as far as answering the question for tonight. Tonight's question, does God really say money is the root of all evil? You think it's going to be no, huh? If it's there, yeah, but it's... So you think that's the theme of this series. You know, what I've done for this is I've done some research and I found the top 10 things that people think and just automatically assume are in the Bible. So most of what I preach on in this series, that's going to be the right answer. Is going to be no. Does God say money is the root of all evil? You know, money is a curious thing. It's man-made. There's no real intrinsic value to it. This dollar bill that Maury loaned me, it's not durable. It doesn't last. I can rip it in half. Don't worry, Maury. Going into shock. Anybody got CPR training? I just threatened to tear Maury's money up. It can be burned up. It can be destroyed in any number of ways. It's a man-made thing. But it's important. To say that money is not important would just be delusional. It'd be foolish. It'd be playing ostrich and sticking our head in the ground and pretending money doesn't really exist. Money is real. It's real in the world, in our life, and we cannot function without this stuff. We need money to get by in the world. We can't support ourselves or our families without money. And if you don't think money is important, try going without it for a period of time and let me know what happens. Money is a very precious thing for human beings. We have prisons that are full of people who have committed illegal acts in an attempt to get their hands on it. Marriages dissolve over money. I've seen families torn apart over money. Someone passes away and someone got more money in an inheritance than they got, and the families are forever ripped apart. Wars have been fought over money. People have been sold into slavery for the gain of money. People die every day because of money. There are a few things in this life that are more important to us than money. And our views regarding money are also curious. They're highly subjective. Money is viewed as either good or evil depending on who has it, how much of it they have, and how they went about obtaining it. It is possible for other people to have too much money, but it is impossible in our minds for us to ever have too much. Too much money can corrupt a person. Not enough, as I said, can cause a person to commit illegal acts in order to get some. Money plays a huge role in our politics. A candidate's legitimacy is based on how well they raise money, their fundraising, what we call their campaign war chest. The media tracks how much a candidate brings in money. They report it to us, and that is supposed to have a huge factor or give us an indication of their electability. We accept that as part of politics, but at the same time, we rail against it. We want the money removed from politics. If you've heard about the governor's race in Illinois coming up this year, Governor Rauner versus Pritzker, it's predicted they are going to break an all-time record money spent for a governor's race. It's predicted between the two of them, they're going to top $300 million in seeking the office of a bankrupt state. There's some irony there if you stop and think about it. It's become highly popular nowadays to blame people that have a lot of money for the woes and the troubles of our nation, what we call the one percenters. We harbor resentment toward them because of their fantastic wealth, and yet at the same time, those same people, we afford them celebrity status. We cater to them. We follow their lives on television. We come at it from both ends. Prime example, the Kardashian clan. Someone tell me what the appeal of those people is, other than the fact that they're loaded with money. One made a sex tape, one had a sex change, and America can't get enough of them, simply because they're wealthy. We admire someone's ability to rise from poverty to wealth. But be warned, if you become too wealthy, we'll turn on you and will demonize you. None of us would turn down money if someone offered it to us, large amounts of money. But we criticize people like ball players and movie stars who in our minds have too much of it. It seems that the key to determining if money is good or bad depends on whose pocket that money resides in. Money is a very curious thing to ponder. We say that it goes a long way toward determining happiness in life. Some say that you can't be happy without it, and others say that it can't buy you happiness. So which one is it? Is money good or is money bad? What do you think? Good or bad? Money is a major contributor to stress level for Americans today. So in that sense, I guess you could say money is bad. The American Psychological Association did a study, and they found that for 72% of Americans, finances are causing them a great deal of stress, and that crosses all levels of income. That is from the poor to the super rich. Even people that have tons of money state that money is a great source of stress. And the happiness level that we think money brings to us, the more money we have, the happier we are, right? Princeton University did a study on that. I may have mentioned this to you one time before. They came across something fascinating. It's called the $75,000 annual income benchmark. In America today, if you have an income of $75,000, that seems to be the magic number. Because as far as money bringing you happiness, $75,000 is as happy as you're ever going to be. $75,000 provides for the things we need, the basics of life, and we are content if we hit that level, no matter how much more we earn than $75,000. They discovered that our happiness level does not increase one bit. Now, the lower our income below 75 grand, the less happy we are. But happiness peaks at 75,000. People that make more than that, they identify themselves as a greater level of satisfaction because they think that their life is going as it should. But their level of happiness does not increase one iota. So in a nutshell, higher incomes don't bring happiness. They just make you think that life is better than what it was before without it. Along those lines, the New York Times did an investigative study. And they found as far as bringing happiness, once you hit that $75,000 level, the only way happiness increases is based on how you spend the money. Spending money on others will increase that level of happiness. People that reach that mark and then give greatly to others find that they do have a much greater sense of happiness in life. They derive a greater sense of reward and satisfaction from it. Spending on others. It seems that maybe God knows a little bit about what He's talking about when it comes to money and what we do with it, how we spend it. He knows a little bit about that after all. Speaking of God, it's about time I got back to the original question. Does God say that money is the root of all evil? I think Kim was on to it. The answer is no. He does not say that. He comes really, really close. He misses it by 2 words. He actually adds 2 words to it. And what he's talking about is how we approach money, the role that it plays in our life. That's what determines if it's evil or good. It's found in 1 Timothy chapter 6. What God does say is that love of money is a root of evil. A root of all kinds of evil. There is nothing wrong or sinful about money itself. God never says that. God never intends that. If you are rich, if God has blessed you with wealth, that doesn't mean that you're a bad person. There is nothing sinful or wrong about being wealthy. Where God draws the line, love of money, is when we cross that mark into sinfulness. 1 Timothy chapter 6, 6 through 10, we'll expand on it a little bit. But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, this gets back to that magic $75,000 mark. If we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Take a guess here. Who do you think, those are the words of the Apostle Paul, who do you think originally when he spoke that, who do you think they were aimed at? Who do you think he was talking about? Love of money, wanting to get more, encountering all kinds of griefs. Who do you think his target was? Preachers. He was talking about preachers. He's talking about men who had gone into preaching and starting churches just to get rich. They were in it strictly for the money. That's a hard thing to grasp, isn't it? Must have been different back then. I can't imagine something like that occurring today. I've never heard of anybody in becoming a pastor to get rich. And even though that was his original intention, the teaching that he gives there applies to every believing Christian as well. Let's break it down a little bit. Verse 6. But godliness with contentment is great gain. Godliness does provide great gain, but it's not necessarily financially. It doesn't mean that if we're a godly person that God's automatically going to make us rich. I'm going to refer a lot tonight back to the original Greek meaning of some of these words that I think is really going to help us grasp what God is saying here. Godliness with contentment is great gain. That word contentment, in the original Greek, what it means is self-sufficiency. Paul is stressing that for Christians, contentment is found only in God, in spiritual riches. Once our basic needs are met, we become content, and from that point on, the only way we're going to find more happiness is through God. When we are rich, or we are rich, when we reach a point when we are content with what we have. The richest person on earth is the one who is content and doesn't need anything else. Think about that for a minute. We strive for money to achieve more happiness, right? To achieve more contentment. The things that we need, the things that we think we need. If we reach a point where we are content with what we have, that's as rich as you can get. Because more money is not going to do you any good. You're satisfied with what you have. A Greek philosopher centuries ago, a guy by the name of Epicurus, he said that the secret of contentment, add not to a man's possessions, but take away his desires. If we reach a point where we are content with what God has given us and we don't desire more, you can't get any richer than that. The Bible teaches that very thing. Proverbs 30, God's 2 things I ask of you, Lord. Do not refuse me before I die. Keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise I may have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God. We are the richest when we desire the least. It frees us from that stress and strain that I talked about earlier of constantly striving for more. A truly godly person is not motivated by love of money. Their motivation comes from love of God. Moving on to verse 7. For we brought nothing into the world. I'm back into Timothy now. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. Think about how many hours and the energy we spend and the work we put in, and how futile it is in our lives trying to obtain things that are temporary. Because nothing we obtain physically in this world is going to last. People whose lives are consumed by the love of money, we're spending our time pursuing things that are just locked into a particular space and time. Can't take them with us. They're not going to impact our eternity one bit, but so much of our lives is spent chasing them down. Verse 8, but if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Again, that's getting back to nowadays, it's that $75,000 mark. Our needs are met. We have everything we need for life. We have shelter, we have food, we have clothing. There's nothing more that we need. And if we become consumed with getting more, there's nothing wrong with having more, but if we can become consumed with getting more, then basically we're telling God, you haven't given me enough. I'm not satisfied with what you've given me. I need more. Now, Paul's not saying that we need to take a vow of poverty in order to be a Christian. He does not condemn having more. He does not condemn having possessions. It's dependent if God provides them for us out of His grace. As I said, there's nothing wrong with it. What He does condemn is a self-indulgent desire for money brought on by being discontented with what God has given us. That's the thing we have to watch for. Is God blessing us with more, or are we just pushing for more because we're unhappy with God? Verse 9, those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. Those who want to get rich, the word want, in the original Greek, it's not describing some type of emotional desire. You know, emotionally, I want something, it's appealing to me. What it does mean is a conscious decision to pursue wealth above everything else. It's a decision to take action and get everything that you can, possession-wise and money-wise, out of life. What that word want actually means there is greed. That's how it would translate. Greedy people are consumed by their drive to get more. They're chasing after what they want, or chasing after what they want becomes the passion in their life. And eventually it consumes a person and it controls their life. Foolish and harmful desires, that translates to irrational, senseless, illogical. We become so consumed with getting more that our desires can become sinful, and they're actually desires that do us harm in the long run. We never truly obtain happiness, because if our desire is to get more, you can't get there. There's no end to that road. If the desire is always to get more, you can't reach the goal. It is a futile, lifelong pursuit of something that we can never obtain. It is foolishness. Plunge. Plunge means to literally submerge, to sink. It means to drag a person to the bottom. Pursuing money as your passion will eventually drown a person in their own greed. Ruin and destruction. That means unavoidable distress and torment. Chasing after money, as I said, is constantly stressful. Once you get it, once you get possessions, then you got to worry about holding on to what you've got. Stress kills. We know that. Stress kills physically. But it also means the ruin and destruction. It also means the ruin of our soul. It means eternal destruction. What it's saying is that greed is a road to hell. Verse 10, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Love of money. It doesn't translate over directly into English, but that phrase is really a compound word for the Greeks. It's the combination of two words, friend and silver. What it means is we are a friend of silver. We are friendly with money. It literally means that we have a very tight and intimate relationship with our money. greed. It means greed, and the way it's worded here, it means a very specific type of greed. In their language, it's a greed equated to idolatry. It's something from the heart which creates distance between the person and God. And that's the key to what God is saying here. Right there is where we find the answer to the question, is money good or is it evil? Money itself is not evil. But love of money is a root of evil, but it's not the evil itself. It's not the evil that Paul is driving at. A root, singular. You have a tree. You got some roots of the tree that you can see from the surface, right? They come up and they kind of support the tree. You can see them. But the root that gives life to the tree, I believe, is what you call a taproot. You don't see the taproot. That's down underground. He's saying a root. Love of money is just, it's a root growing off of the main root, the taproot. The taproot, where the life comes from, that's the evil that Paul is driving at here. Love of money is a pathway to hell because it is a sign that we have created a false god in our lives. And the false god is not money. The false god is in that taproot. The false god that we actually worship through love of money is me. In my world, in my life, I have become my god. It is the spiritual disease of self-love. That's where love of money comes from. It's my way versus God's way. It's my wants, my desires, my well-being ahead of everything and everybody, including God. I love my money because I want more for me. It's just a natural offshoot of being in love with myself. Love of self is the true root of all evil and sin. You take any sin in the world, I don't care what it is, it has its origin in self-love. It has its origin in me first, every time, all the time. You name the sin and you bore down deep enough, that's what you're going to find in that taproot, is love of me. Love of money is not the sin that condemns us before God. Like I said, it's simply a byproduct of the real sin. Love of money sort of exposes us for who we really are. Everything for myself, nothing for anyone else. Love of money exposes our true love, me. And the Bible gives us a vivid description of what that me in self-love is like. It's from 2 Timothy now. But mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. The last days are today. It doesn't mean that Jesus is coming back tomorrow. He may. But the last days that we hear so often in our religion, the last days began when Jesus, after he arose from the dead, when Jesus ascended to heaven, that ushered in the last days. And it means that because this is the final age. This is what we call the church age. Jesus established the church. This is the last stage or the last period before Jesus returns to convert earth into eternal heaven. These are the last days. It's the last period before Jesus returns. So we've been in the last days for over 2,000 years now. There will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. Does that sound anything at all like the world we live in today? The last days. It is a direct road to hell because it's all about me. And if it's all about me, that leaves no room for anyone else in my life. It's a pathway to hell because if I'm in love with myself, if it's self-love, well, then I can't carry out the greatest commandments that Jesus gives us. If it's all about me, I can't really love God and I can't really love others because all my attention is 100% centered on me. If my heart is filled with love of me, I have no capacity to love others. If I worship at the altar of me, then I exclude the true God from being present in my life. Self-love Me as God blinds me to the need I have for the real God. And the problem with self-love is me cannot save me. Me has no power or ability to forgive my sins. So I may as well indulge myself in all the pleasures the world has to offer. I may as well pursue that money and enjoy what I have in this life today, because this life is all the life I'm ever going to know. Because without God, I have no hope of anything, any type of life beyond this world. If it's self-love, if my love is me, it's 100%, and there is no room for God to be part of that equation. Love of money, love of me flies in the face of what Christianity is meant to be. And we're not exempt from it. Simply because we're Christians doesn't mean that we're immune to it. We must constantly guard our hearts from being wooed into such an illegitimate, adulterous relationship. Because if I love me, it is adultery when it comes to my relationship with God. It's not the way it's supposed to be. We need to constantly be on guard against trying to assume the role of God in our own lives. And to do that, we must constantly focus on God's Word and His instruction on how we live and what we do with money. Instructions like this from Philippians chapter 2. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of the others. That is the opposite of self-love. That is how God intends us to live. If we abide by that, if we adhere to that, then we should never become lovers of money, friends of silver. We should never have that intimate relationship with our money. Love of money is a root. Love of me is the root. And that's the one that will take us down the path away from eternal heaven and into the torment of eternal hell. And that's all I have to say. Amen.